Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today I wanted to put together a jungle tier list per, y'all's request. So I was streaming the other day and someone asked me if I would do an updated jungle tier list, and I said that I would. I have some characters in here that you might not expect, and I also have some characters that maybe you would expect, I suppose, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we have some junglers and we have some different things, but I don't have like the full Pokemon lineup because not everyone should jungle, even if some of them can. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Talonflame. Talonflame as a jungler. I'm going to be conservative now, and I may actually shift this around, but I think that Talonflame as a jungler is kind of C tier. This character has a lot of potential, but the Speedster role as a whole is just really struggling. They don't scale super well. They're really, really squishy. They just, kind of have a hard time doing end game things outside of Zeraora, and ultimately, even though they're good picks and they're fun picks, there's usually someone that will do their job better, I think. I might move this up to B tier as I decide to shuffle these things around a little bit, but yeah, Talonflame's just been kind of struggling in the meta, in my opinion, so kind of a tough one. Lucario jungle is actually A tier. The crazy thing about Lucario jungle, and the reason why he falls from, say, like S tier and like a traditional tier list, is because Lucario is so good in lane. There's really no reason to take Lucario in the jungle, although it's crazy because he's that good at it. Coming out of the jungle with like powered up punch at level 5 with an extremely strong gank is really, really good. So if you ever had a reason to potentially put Lucario in jungle, then maybe it would make sense, but for now in the current meta, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's really, really strong. So definitely don't sleep on that. Greninja, of course, is going to be an S tier jungler. Does crazy damage, hyper carries, gets all that farm for free with, little to no fear. Greninja's Greninja. So this character has, Surf, has the decent ultimate that it has a smokescreen, which is just like, I don't know, the passive mixed with the Bouffalon, like red buff. This character's just crazy, especially coming into the jungle early. Really, really strong. Gengar, I gotta give it the same Speedster treatment right now. Gengar has some carry potential, and Gengar can be incredibly bursty. It's just not ever worth it to even go in that direction. It feels like there's really no reason to pick Speedsters. They don't scale well. They can do a lot of damage, but when you fall behind on Speedsters, it just feels like a nightmare. So, you really just don't want to be picking them too much, but fun to play. Just unfortunately kind of struggling in the current meta. Gardevoir is a B tier jungler to me. I think that her early game clear is pretty atrocious. It's just not good. Very susceptible and vulnerable in the early game, to counter jungling or just trying to be contested in mid for Corphish. You kind of just stick her in jungle if you want to get her farmed, but she's not an inherently good jungler. It's the attacker effect, right? The attacker effect. You want to throw them in jungle because they're good, but they're not really a good jungler. I don't know. You just want to get them farmed. It's really as simple as that. Greninja is actually a good jungler, but this is not particularly a good jungler, but you just want to get them farmed. So yeah, that's how you can do it. All right, Garchomp. I actually think Garchomp is a B tier jungler. In terms of viability in general, if you're comparing, let's say we'll just at the current state of the list, we'll look at Lucario to Garchomp. Garchomp's a great jungler, but the character itself is struggling to bring a lot to the table. The early game gank potential is really low. The early game helping secure bees is tough. If you run into Greninja in the jungle, you're getting beat up, but Garchomp scales incredibly well. That said, Garchomp doesn't bring an execute to the table. So honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I think that Lucario jungle is objectively better than Garchomp jungle. But Garchomp jungle is not the worst. I would personally rather have a Garchomp on my team than most Speedsters. And yeah, that's just kind of what I'm thinking about it. All right, so this is where things get a little interesting. Crustal jungle. I have played Crustal jungle. The thing about Crustal jungle is and it's going to be like this with a lot of B tier. There's really just no reason to do it. That's where we're at. There's really no reason to do it. But when you do it, it's not bad. The meta doesn't suit it really because of attackers. Honestly, it's really just like what it is, but it's not bad. It's actually kind of surprising to me how strong that it can be. So Crustal Jungle has a lot of potential. Fluffy Tail Stealth Rock is pretty crazy. You can do a lot of cool things with Crustal. Don't really need damage items unless you want the scope lens on him, but yeah, Crustal Jungle is not bad. It's pretty decent. Cinderace. This is where a part of me wants to put Cinderace at S tier like this and just say it's a weaker S tier than Greninja, because I do still feel like running Cinderace in jungle is better than most other options because it's a ranged attacker. I think that's what I'm going to do. This is not meant to say that Greninja is even with Cinderace. It's not true. And maybe I should organize things left to right. I don't know. Maybe I'll consider doing that. I don't even know how to rank characters of different types. Like, I don't know. But yeah, Cinderace, in my opinion, is still an S tier jungler because, you know, I suppose we could technically say that maybe Greninja should be S plus tier if you want me to be a little bit more specific. But ranged attacker, gets crazy farm, can do tons of damage. Like, this character's not bad. It's just Greninja kind of took over the spotlight, has a better execute, or has an execute other than Greninja's or Cinderace's ult. You really don't have a way to secure a lot of farm, so yeah. But Cinderace is still incredibly strong. There's definitely more of a case to be made for taking Cinderace over Lucario, because you could just put Lucario in lane, and like look at these three right here. Like, you could just throw Lucario in lane, and that's why you don't see Lucario jungle a ton, because if you have one of these two who are incredibly strong in the meta currently, then you stick them in jungle. So, all right, Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime. This is gonna sound crazy, but I would genuinely rather have a Mr. Mime than a Speedster in jungle. I know, it's literally ridiculous. I can't even believe I'm putting a support on the list, but Mr. Mime is very, very weird. This character is weird, and I've jungled it a lot. I still like Confusion Barrier on it. It's very good. It's surprisingly good. It's not something you do. It's like Crustal Jungle. It's not really something you do, but it's surprisingly good. I genuinely think that Mr. Mime scales better than both Talonflame and Gengar as well. So you lose burst, but you scale better, and you have a better ultimate. So I can't believe that I'm doing it, but that's literally what I'm doing. Mr. Mime jungle is better than Talonflame and Gengar jungle to me. I think that this character is kind of sleeper pick as a support and potentially as a jungler. If the jungle meta ever changed, honestly, it could be something. It could be something. Probably wouldn't be, but could be. Blastoise jungle, the tank that makes it to A tier for jungle. Crazy. This character just does too much damage. It's that simple. I think that a damage build Blastoise could be viable even if they wasn't super overpowered, and that's cool because that's what I want for the game. I want there to be like alternate builds that make sense. But yeah, this character's crazy. I think in terms of viability, I would rather have Blastoise jungle than Lucario jungle, probably, because again, you could just stick Lucario in lane and you could get your Blastoise extremely fed. So if I was ranking them in terms of their position, I would put Blastoise ahead of Lucario, but I'm not going to do that. It's just worth a discussion topic. But yeah, this tank does incredible damage. Doesn't really feel like a tank, especially if you're going rapid spin with water spout. You're going to be dealing a ton of damage. Getting this Blastoise ahead, if you ever jungle Blastoise into a lane Blastoise, you know what I mean. The lane Blastoise wants to do crazy Blastoise things, but you're ahead of them, so it's really, really incredibly hard for them to deal with. As for Absol, I'm literally leaving Absol on the D tier. Ironically enough, Absol has more early game carry potential than the other Speedsters, but the other Speedsters slightly, just ever so slightly outscale Absol. So, I don't know. I would rather have a Talonflame or a Gengar on my team, but it's all feeling very trivial and C to D tier in my opinion. Like, I don't know. Charizard jungle, not nearly as bad as people think, but also not super great. I've even pulled my Charizard playtime down a little bit, which makes me sad. I love Charizard, but honestly, we're just in such a heavy auto attack meta that, you know, I had a game yesterday where I popped my Unite move and I just died, and with Buddy Barrier on, it's crazy. With current state of Blastoise and Greninja, and I don't know, there's just a lot of auto attacking going on, and you can get kind of blown up. I did put Venusaur on the list. I don't know what to do with this character. Like, you can definitely jungle this character, and like getting experience on this character is great, but I don't think you need to. It's like Lucario. It's like the character's fine in lane, but you could jungle this if you wanted to get the character ahead. I guess it's a B tier pick. Like, it's not bad at all. It's really not. But again, like B tier, if you look at it, it's like a bunch of good Pokemon, or good-ish Pokemon, that just like you don't really have a reason to throw them in jungle in the current state of the meta, but they jungle very, very well. You know, they're good at it. It gets them experience. If you wanted to get them ahead to some degree, I'll put it this way: in terms of viability, I would definitely have a Venusaur on my team over, say, a Talonflame or a Gengar. And yeah, Venusaur can do a lot, so that's what I'm thinking. Zeraora, another A tier pick, very, very strong in the current meta in terms of jungling. I think the character holds its own weight very well, is the only speedster that can actually team fight, the only speedster that scales well, has a strong ultimate, does well in the early jungle, has really, really high base stats, so can brawl like really easily early on. Very, very solid. And Machamp, another A tier jungler. This character is really, really strong. Let me move my Absol back over, because I want it to look like a nice, neat tier list. Let's talk about Machamp. I think this is my opinion. If you were to knock out Cinderace and Greninja from jungle, the best junglers would literally be Blastoise, Zeraora, and Machamp. And then you would have the occasional fill-in from like some of these B tier picks that are, you know, decently viable, that would actually fill into the jungle. As for C and D tier speedster picks, speedsters need love, like across the board, except for Zeraora. Zeraora does this AoE damage. He keeps up in damage well, has you know, good survivability, and is very bursty. But the other speedsters, not so much. But yeah, so if you were to knock out the attackers out of jungle, which is why they're sitting at S tier, because they're just that good at jungling, you would have a lot of Blastoise jungling with the current balance. You'd have a lot of Zeraora and a lot of Machamp jungling, in my opinion. And then, of course, you would have the occasional other junglers. Now, if you were to knock out attackers, maybe Gardevoir wouldn't fill in that list anymore, which I would be totally fine with. I think that if they are to get attackers out of jungle, they need to buff the laning phases of some of these characters, just a little bit at least. I don't mind these characters up here having like a slower curve to getting to their strength. Gardevoir needs to get a little bit better in lane for sure. I think all three of these need to be a little better in lane. But yeah, as for junglers, Machamp, level 5 submission, really, really strong ganks, brings a lot to the table. This character's great. The reality is just there's no reason to take it in the jungle, really. And that goes for literally everybody A tier and below. There's almost no reason to ever take any of these characters in a jungle unless you just want to, if you have the option to play Greninja or Cinderace, because they're just that strong in the jungle. But Charizard, great backline dive potential. Mime, very, very disruptive, can bring damage to the table, and is surprisingly decent in jungle. Venusaur, same deal. Great execute, great character in general, so decent. Crustle does backdoor things, shreds their objectives. Garchomp, great at team fighting when they get ramped up. Great at objective shred. Gardevoir, best team fight ult in the game probably. And then you have our speedsters, who, if you can get ahead on speedsters, you can do well. And that literally goes for like all three of these down here. If you can get ahead, you can do really, really well. But if you're even or you fall behind, it just feels like they fall off a cliff. So this is kind of what I'm thinking in terms of jungle viability. Let me know. I didn't put a ton of other extra picks on here. Like, what am I missing? I don't have like Pikachu or Ninetales, Cramorant, stuff like that, because I just don't really see the viability of putting some of those in here. Other tanks like Slowbro, like, yeah, you can jungle those, but now you're really pushing it, right? Like, there's really no reason to put them in there. Eldegoss, yeah, like I said, Cramorant, Pikachu, Wigglytuff, and honestly, Wigglytuff could make the list in B tier. Like, realistically, Wigglytuff as jungle is not bad by any means. But I don't really see the reason of doing it, because she's just so strong in lane. It's kind of like Lucario, but like, actually, there's really no reason to put Wigglytuff in jungle. And even something like Flailon, Snorlax, like, yeah, I could throw them on the list and put them like B tier, C tier, but I just don't really see the point. And then, of course, someone like Blissey would never make this list. So this is kind of what I'm thinking. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to hear it. It's you know, I feel bad for speedsters. I feel like it's controversial. I have Mr. Mime literally a higher jungler tier pick than speedsters, which There's no way I don't get a comment about that, right? But it's just true. I think that Mr. Mime actually scales well and can do some good things. I think all of these characters in B tier actually scale well and can do some things, whereas C and D tier, not so much. A tier is going to be the insane junglers, but they just don't really see much jungle playtime because of S tier. And of the A tier, like I said, Lucario is A tier because Lucario is insanely strong, but we mostly see playtime in lane. And then Blastoise, incredible. Zeraora, incredible. Machamp, incredible. With B tier being a bunch of solid picks for jungle. So, like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would definitely love to hear it and see what y'all are thinking. As always, be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone that you love them. And I'll see you on the next video.